sports on WFLA Now. Here's JB Buno.
Breaking news here in Hillsborough County. A stay-at-home order has been issued, but no curfew going into effect as originally suggested. We're here live on WFLA Now with Tampa Police Chief Brian Dugan joining us to answer some of the questions. And actually, that's the wrong, but there we are. There's Chief Dugan. Hey there, Chief Dugan. Hope all is well. Thank you for joining us here on WFLA Now. Just really quickly, your reaction to what the Hillsborough County EPG just passed regarding no curfew, but a 24-hour stay-at-home order, and how this is going to impact the Tampa Police Department.
Yeah, I'm glad that they took this measure. It's about, personal safety. It's a public safety matter. That's what people need to realize. This is a public health crisis, a world pandemic that not necessarily is a law enforcement matter, but because of the situation is now bled over into law enforcement. So I'm very glad that they've taken this step.
What does this mean for your officers on the streets?
Well, what we've been doing is we're using education and information. This really is basically telling people stay inside. Unless you absolutely have to come out, you need to stay inside. And so what it does is, we're really more about informing people about the whole situation. We're not interested in making an arrest. It's I like that there's very few restrictions. Actually, there's a lot of exemptions. But what it's doing is encouraging people to stay inside.
When we're talking about what your officers have encountered on the streets, we're talking about stopping the spread of COVID-19. What kind of reaction have your officers with Tampa Police gotten from the public?
It's been fairly positive. You have occasionally people who always want to challenge authority and, tell you it's unconstitutional and all that stuff. But for the most part, people are in compliance and they understand. But, we're still having a tremendous amount of people out there on the streets. And I'm not sure people are taking it as serious as they need to be. I think as the number of positive cases increase, which it already is, that's when it's going to hit home. People need to start taking heed to it.
We want to remind folks that we're live here on WFLA Now with a live Q&A asking. We have Chief Dugan here for about the next few minutes or so, maybe 5 or 6 minutes, that we're going to ask him to hang out with us here on WFLA Now to answer your questions. And the first one coming in here from Mike Katona. You can use the hashtag HeyJB or hashtag Chief Dugan. He says, is it okay to just go out for a drive, Chief Dugan? Not getting out of the car or going anyplace, just some time out of the house. What do you tell people that are looking to just leave their homes, whether it's for a walk or a drive? I mean, we want to limit travel to essential travel usually as much as we can, but what do you tell people out there that are asking questions about getting out of the house a little bit?
We're encouraging social distancing. And so the reality is if somebody wanted to go for a drive in their car by themselves and just kind of get out of the house for a minute, they're not exposing themselves to anyone else. There would be nothing wrong with that. They're certainly not going to be stopped and challenged about that. What I, use the example of, add a little bit of humor and sarcasm into it, is if you're out there going for a jog, we're not going to stop you. But if you're out there jogging down the street with a flat screen TV on your shoulder, we're going to stop you and ask you what you're doing. And it's that type of stuff. So going out for a drive, getting some fresh air, going for a walk, exercising, walking a dog, there's nothing wrong with that. You need to practice social distancing so we're not spreading this virus.
I have to ask because you were live yesterday. We're going to talk a little bit about the positive case that we have here in your department at TPD here in a moment. But you were live during a press conference yesterday. The press conference that we carried here on WFLA Now when you were announcing the positive case within TPD and how the timeline of events. And as you were live during the press conference, a woman walked right behind you, getting within several feet of you. We're always preaching social distancing, but here during that moment, we had a woman that was walking literally within what appeared to be 18 inches of you on a public sidewalk. Is that not the type of behavior that we're trying to dissuade people from doing? And what is your views on just people being out and about, whether it's during the week or during the weekend, when it comes to just people out and about in the city of Tampa?
I think if you don't have to be outside for something, you need to stay indoors. There are some true heroes out there right now. And I'm not talking about cops and firefighters, and trust me, cops, firefighters, and healthcare workers are really putting themselves at danger. But you look at the truck drivers and the solid waste people, the people working at restaurants, the bag person at Publix. These people are risking their lives, putting themselves exposure so that they can provide essential services. And think about them. Think about the high school kid working at the local grocery store, bagging groceries, that you're potentially exposing that person, and they're just trying to help this society. If you don't need to be out, you need to stay home.
One of the things that we've been talking about quite a bit here on WFLA Now, Chief Dugan, is the difference between a curfew, the difference between a stay-at-home directive and a stay-at-home order. Again, for those of you just joining us, maybe you just logged on a moment ago, Chief Brian Dugan here with Tampa Police and the Hillsborough County EPG voting against a curfew in favor of a 24/7 stay-at-home order. Now, just again, Chief Dugan, your thoughts on dropping the curfew. Was that a decision that you supported? We heard from Sheriff Chad Chronister, and now that we have a little bit of a larger digital audience here, I just want to get your thoughts on, again, the decision to drop the curfew but maintain a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week stay-at-home order.
You know, the curfew word was problematic because they were talking about from 10 to 5 a.m. all through Saturday and Sunday. It just becomes difficult. We don't want to turn into a police state, but we're just encouraging people to stay at home. And I do think maybe now we're getting into, as a society, we're splitting hairs where it's semantics. Whether we call it a curfew, a stay-at-home order, that type of stuff. The idea is to get people to be in compliance, to get them to stay at home. You know, we had a police officer test positive for COVID-19 yesterday. We're waiting on test results for 9 other officers. This is a serious situation here. We have healthcare workers who have now tested positive. The numbers are going to increase dramatically if you just watch what's going on across the nation. Tampa Bay is not going to be any different than anyone else.
We have a lot of questions coming in here, Chief Dugan, and this is the last question I'm going to ask you about just what's going on here on the streets of Tampa, and then I want to just get your thoughts, as you just alluded to, the Tampa officer that tested positive and the tests right now that are pending for your other officers. But really quickly, we have a lot of people here in the comment section asking about how the stay-at-home order is going to impact their business. We're talking about hair salons, barber shops. We've gotten a lot of questions about daycares. Are Tampa officers going to be going into businesses to enforce the stay-at-home order to make sure that non-essential businesses that are open all the employees at that business are going to be maintaining a distance of 6 feet or more? Are you going to be going into businesses, or is the directive for your officers going to be mostly to police the streets and keep an eye on what's going on outside of businesses?
Yeah, we're looking at keeping the streets safe. Unfortunately, hair salons, barbershops, nail salons, spas, alterations, those 4 types of businesses are going to be shut down. Now, we're not going to go and do inspections and all that stuff, but if a business can't practice social distancing, they're going to have to close down. But we're not looking at arresting people, educating them. We're not going to go out and even look. But if we see it, or someone calls us, we're going to go in there and educate them and notify them of this order.
For everyone wondering and saying prayers for of course, all of the first responders across the country that are putting themselves in harm's way and of course are still working the streets, putting themselves in danger, perhaps dealing with people that might have COVID-19. Law enforcement officers, of course, Chief Dugan, you know this, and you know this better than anybody. They can't work from home. You have to be out, and of course you have to be keeping the public safe. We have a Tampa police officer that has tested positive for COVID-19. Can you give us an update on that officer, and also just tell us about how many people within your department could be impacted by this? And you mentioned just some of the officers that are waiting back on test results right now.
The officer's doing much better. Was not tremendously sick, fortunately, but now we have to worry about exposure to the family, to that officer's family. We have 30 officers currently on quarantine, which means they're doing self-isolation from their families. They're not allowed to come to work. We have another 15 officers that we call actively monitoring, trying to make sure that they don't have symptoms, checking in with the occupational nurse on a daily basis. And, as police officers, we can't do our jobs without potentially being exposed to this virus. It's the nature of the business. We can't walk around with gloves and biohazard suits on. It's just not practical. It's not a safe way to deal with people that may have ill intent. If we know that someone has the virus, then we use the personal protection equipment, the universal precautions, that type of stuff. But it's very difficult. But what I don't want, I want people to remember, it's not only the first responders and healthcare workers. Like I said earlier, it's the truck drivers, the people working at the grocery stores that are trying to provide essential services, that you're looking at exposing them to the virus if you don't need to be out. That's what people need to remember. It's about exposure. You're exposing someone else, and then they're taking it back to their family. And that is why this virus is so different than everything else, according to the medical officials, is that it's very contagious. And that's what you worry about, is how are we going to spread it and how are we going to contain it.
I have two final questions here for you, Chief Dugan. First off, just preventative measures. What your officers and what your directive has been to Tampa Police as far as making sure that the officers that are out there keeping the public safe are doing so with their own safety in mind, so that they're not, of course, contracting COVID-19.
Well, there's a lack of personal protection equipment with the police department. There's a lack of supplies, of replenishment of that. So we're struggling with that. We're doing everything we can to screen officers and who they come in contact with. Just the other night, the 3 officers who performed CPR on someone with no cause of death, now they're on quarantine until we can determine what that cause of death was. Those are the type of things that's going on out there. As cops, we're used to the bombs and the bullets and the blood. We have a bomb team and we have a SWAT team and we see blood every day. But this is an enemy that we can't see, and the rules of engagement have changed dramatically.
When we have just a plethora of comments coming in here, Chief Dugan, pertaining to daycares. Maybe you could just kind of, I know that this is a question that perhaps is best geared for the mayor, and we hope to have Mayor Jane Castor join us in a little bit, but just for the amount of people, and there's just so many questions coming in, your thoughts on daycares and how it's impacted by stay-at-home.
Yeah, the daycare is exempt. You can take your kid to the daycare center, and especially for essential workers. And so there's a tremendous amount of exemptions out there. What they're stressing is that we want people to go in to stay inside. It's safer inside than it is anywhere else.
All right, and then finally here, Chief Dugan, we've heard so much. Last question here. We've heard so much about enforceability. If you have somebody that is non-compliant with this stay-at-home order, and perhaps you run into this same person again and again and again, just somebody who just isn't getting it through their head that they need to be following the rules and staying at home, the questions come up time and time again. What do you do with some person that isn't following the rules put in place by our elected officials when it comes to the stay-at-home order? It's a question that keeps popping up, enforceability and what people in power like yourself and Sheriff Chad Chronister, what they can do when it comes to enforceability of this order.
Well, the thing with it is, here's what people remember. We're looking at education and information. That is part of the requirement. But the bottom line is, once we've done the education, the information, we've issued you a warning, which will be documented. We come across several times. Part of the law is we have to give you the warning. When we've already done that, you can go to jail. You can spend, it's up to a $500 fine, 60 days in jail. And I want to remind people that we're not afraid. We're not about putting people in jail, but we're not afraid to do it. And it's not only about this safe at home order, it's also about the law in general. The Hillsborough County Jail is open for business, and TPD will put you in jail if you're breaking the law.
Everybody, Tampa Police Chief Brian Dugan joining us here live on WFLA Now, reacting to the news that there is no curfew going to be put into effect in Hillsborough County. Instead, a 24-hour stay-at-home order goes into effect Friday, 10 o'clock at night. And, of course, it's Chief Dugan and all of his officers keeping us safe. Chief Dugan, first of all, thank you for your service. Thank you for helping us through this very trying time. Thank you for appearing here on WFLA Now to answer questions from our followers. We really appreciate it. And all the best to you and your officers, especially the ones that are waiting for test results right now. Just your final thoughts here before we say farewell. And we just appreciate you being on the call.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Just stay inside. If you follow common sense practices, you won't have to worry about any dealings with law enforcement. It's very important. This is real, and it's very dangerous. We need everyone to stay inside. And the bottom line is I ask that everyone be careful out there.
All right, everybody. Chief Brian Dugan with Tampa Police. Chief Dugan, we hope to see you in the Stream Center again. We've had you in the Stream Center before. We hope to have you again in here when we can, of course, be a little bit closer together than 6 feet and have more great conversations about what's best for Tampa residents. We really appreciate you being here with us on WFLA Now. More to come on WFLA Now. We hope to have Tampa Mayor Jane Castor join us and some others. Stay with us here. We'll be right back.